The Argonauts ship was actually a spacecraft, and here are the reasons why. Many of us will have heard or read that the Argonauts had a ship, the Argo, and it was a ship, or more generally, that it had the ability to fly. This last we can relatively easily assert once we try to see its shape, based on the descriptions of Orpheus in the Argonauts. And above we see a rare depiction of Argos from the sanctuary of Orthia, Artemis in Sparta. It helps us visualize to better understand what we will describe next. Argo is shaped like a bow. In fact, the decorative circles and the symbols of the sun Hyperion are allusions to her flight in the zodiac. That is, that she also flew into space. Taking into account that the signs are counted as 13 together with Ophiuchus, also notice that the ship has no oars. The one on the right that looks like an oar is a platform where the people step onto. According to the Argonauts, the interior of the ship is hollow, and the exterior has that of a Dolic island and belongs to the genre Amphilisa. This type is rowed from both sides, but also has the meaning of amphikyrtus, hence curved from both sides and round. The shape of the Dolic island is the long ship. In 2 words, the shape of the Argos was oblong, like roughly the shape of a drop, like an egg or maybe a flying saucer. Note that the related word of Amphielisa is Amphialiktos, which is also a second meaning of Eliso, which means the one revolving the circle. This allows us to assume that Argo was rotating. Perhaps the above is unimportant to show that the Argo did not always come into contact with the sea when she traveled, so let's give the following information. It seems that the Argo also navigated with the voice of its respective captain, something that is starting to become a reality again in our days. So Orpheus, who was following goddess Athena's instructions, gave Argo a verbal command to hurry, and the Argo ship obeyed, rose quickly, lightened the whole construction, and slipped into the sea. Argonauts 270-271. What else could be clearer than this? That it rose, it came up, it lifted itself up. Also, and as a final proof that Argo was flying, we quote the following. The Argo has always traveled to places without sea or has crossed dry land in order to reach her destination, and has traveled to Kochlis, the Caucasus in Egypt, but also to countries we know today as America, Russia, etc. Don't ask yourself how and why, just consider the following incident that occurred after the construction of the craft, where Jason of the Argonauts set out to sail the Peloponnese in the Argo. As he was marching towards the Melian, he was suddenly carried away by the north, he says, and was traveling far towards Libya. But before he reached good land, he fell onto the dry land of Tritonida Lake, Herodotus 4:179. And it's not only Herodotus which gives us this information. How did the Argo find itself from the Sea of Malaya to the land of Africa, several kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea? Was she carried over the land by the wind, without, of course, breaking or emptying the crew into the air? Did the Argonauts carry her on their backs? Or did it just land after a routine flight? Will you tell me a ship, flying saucer, or whatever you want to call it, like the Argo, since it has the ability to fly, why should it be rowable? First of all, the meaning of Amphielisa in Greek is twofold. 1, the ship rode from both sides, or 2, it could be biconvex. Perhaps then it only means biconvex. But the copyist responsible for the preservation of the text accepted the first meaning by an extension consciously or subconsciously filling in the distortion themselves. And finally, we cannot rule out the fact that Argo was both rowing and flying, paddled, yes, but with what sense? Chances are it's just terminology that we cannot immediately explain. We can only assume that they used the term rower when she was not flying in the air and floating on the surface of the sea. And of course, she was not traveling with oars, but with some kind of machine. Perhaps the oar indicated the power of the ship, just as today we use the term horse for our car's horsepower. When we say horsepower, or that a car is a 10 horsepower, it does not mean that there are actually 10 horses inside the car. By the same logic, the horsepower of the Argos was 50 oars, that is, the power of its engine was as much as 50 men were rowing it. It's also possible that the Argo had the ability to sail as far as today's hydrofoils, and this is because we see frequent use of the sea at high speed. That is, if we assume that it functioned as a flying saucer, it certainly had other possibilities. Whenever it was not flying, it crossed the sea like all ships, since it had a keel, or like a dolphin. Or when it crossed the land, it probably did so as a hovercraft. This is almost clear from the description, and it rose very quickly and lightly, burned the wood, and quickly slipped into the sea. Argonauts 270 to 271. Among other things, the Argo had what we would today call a sunroof. So when, in one of the above ways, she reached the islet of Mars, thousands of birds here too, with bronze wings attacking her, they seem to have taken the crew by surprise, and in the midst of the brazen wing fire, someone struck the Argonaut Elias on the shoulder. The rest of his companions, however, caught up and reacted with shouts and a loud noise, and they drove these birds away from them. Except, therefore, that it was biconvex, part of its roof opened so that the Argonauts were exposed to the Greek blue-white sky. All this gives us a picture of a ship or a craft that had the shape of a bow on both sides, rotated, flew with some anti-gravity system, and finally had the shape and capabilities of a flying saucer. This I've translated from a Greek article for you. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.